Welcome again to Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery. I am Mark, the author of all works presented on this channel. I remind you that these programs are offered free of charge, but I retain the copyright to everything on them. 1 year ago at Halloween, I gave you the story, Why Grandpas Don't Wear Earrings, a spooky adventure. This year, I offer another tale appropriate for the season. Here is the U.S. Marine Corps. Loud laughter greeted Chet as he pushed open the door to Holly's Cafe. It was 6:30 on a Saturday morning. The warm air and the smell of coffee compensated for the aches in his body. Still half asleep, he failed to notice the trio of buddies occupying a booth in the corner. "Looky what the cat drug in," said Jeb. Mookie and Joe laughed. Spotting his friends, Chet shuffled his way in their direction. The jacket with a torn collar and rumpled pants were indices of his carefree lifestyle. Big ears, freckled cheeks, and tousled brown hair were permanent features that harmonized with the garments. He slumped into a seat beside Joe. Joe, the young man with the dirty fingernails and the missing tooth, lost in a recent motorcycle accident, sat up in the booth and stared at Chet. "Hey, what happened to you?" he asked. "Looks like someone fixed you good." There was a bruise over Chet's right eye and a few abrasions on his left cheek. "Nah, nothing like that," retorted Chet. "I just had a little accident." His companions laughed. "Yeah," said Jeb, "you probably just bumped into a fist." Holly came to the booth and poured coffee into a cup for the newcomer. Good-natured and ordinarily talkative, the chubby waitress was feeling pressed this morning. There were more customers than usual. "What else you gonna have, Chet?" she asked. Too groggy to think straight, the young man didn't know how to respond. "What you guys eating?" he asked. "Me and Mookie's having pancakes," replied Jeb. "Joe's eating eggs." Chet closed his eyes. "Come on now," said Holly. "I ain't got all day." With a sigh, Chet responded, "Okay. Bring me some scrambled eggs and toast." While Holly went to fetch the order and his companions ate their breakfast, Chet closed his eyes and enjoyed 2 minutes of silence. He was on the verge of dozing when Mookie suddenly spoke out. "Tomorrow night's Halloween. What you guys gonna do?" "I dunno," replied Joe. "Maybe go to a movie." Mookie frowned before saying, "Sally Jean's having a party at her house. Maybe we could crash it." "Not worth doing," countered Jeb. "Her folks is very strict. They never let you do nothing. That's the trouble nowadays. Here it is 1993, and there ain't no fun no more in all of North Carolina." Mookie, the jokester with the clownish face, said, "Remember back in the 10th grade when we painted all them naked ladies on Bert Werner's barn? Now that was fun." "Ain't there nothing we can do this year for a little excitement?" asked Joe. Awakened by this discussion, Chet sat up. "How about holding a funeral?" he said. "A funeral?" asked Jeb. "Yeah," replied Chet. "Do y'all know the story about how Haunted Hill got its name?" "No," said Joe. "Something about a soldier who died there," volunteered Mookie. "That's right," said Chet. "During World War II, a Marine from Camp Lejeune died on that hill. Lots of people from town saw the body. But something strange happened. The body disappeared. With no body, they couldn't give it no burial. Since that time long ago, some people claims to have seen that soldier up on the hill all by himself. Townsfolk think he's looking for a proper burial. Well, that's my idea. We're going to give him a funeral. Hey, that's a great idea, said Jeb. So what does you have in mind? Chet smiled and leaned forward. Of course, we don't have no body, so we have to make one out of straw or something. But we can still have a proper ceremony with candles and such. We'll invite Betty Sue and Angie and Francis, and in the dark they'll get scared and scream and such. It'll be great fun. I really like that idea, said Joe, but how are we going to get us a coffin? That's easy, Jeb responded. I'll make us one. Working at the lumber yard, I could get some scraps of wood and build one today after work. I'll make a straw body too and put it inside. Then I'll hide everything till tomorrow night. What else we need? Asked Mookie. Chet responded, well, if Jeb's making the coffin, I'll invite the girls. Mookie, you bring the candles, a Bible, and anything else you think we might need. Don't forget a couple of shovels. Joe, you make a cross to put over the grave. We'll all meet at Jeb's at 11 tomorrow night. That should give us enough time to carry the coffin up the hill. The funeral will be at midnight. Everyone smiled. 7 young adults assembled at Jeb Updike's place at 11 on Halloween. From his location at the edge of town, they could hear the last trick-or-treaters heading home. For late October, the weather was reasonably temperate. Uncovering the coffin which lay beneath the tarp, they tried to attach lighted candles to its corners. A slight breeze hampered their efforts. While Pastor Mookie Monroe recited prayers, his companions picked up the burden and trudged up Haunted Hill. Near the summit, beside an oak tree, the group selected a suitable burial site. Then the young men started to dig. When the hole reached 3 feet in depth, they took a short rest. Kind of spooky up here, said Betty Sue. She was the helpless type who wanted boys to do things for her. Sure glad you boys are around. Wouldn't want to be here all alone at this hour. All the young men laughed. There was a slight breeze. In the darkness, Francis screamed when an owl hooted. The graveside ceremony followed soon after completion of the excavation. A flashlight substituted for the useless candles. Before the interment, Mookie offered a few sacred words, laced with wisecracks, and Angie read a poem that she had composed hurriedly that afternoon. As the males prepared to lower the coffin into the hole, Angie exclaimed, "Oh, I nearly forgot. Open the coffin for a minute. I want to pin this rose on the body." "Oh, that's not necessary, is it?" Chet asked. To Chet, Francis said, "What's the matter? You're not scared to see a dead body, are you?" The group laughed. As the coffin lid raised, Angie bent over to place the flower. Suddenly she screamed, "There's a real body in here!" Even the most timid member of the group felt compelled to look. There was no doubt about it. The coffin contained the body of a young adult Caucasian male dressed in a military uniform that bore the inscription U.S. Marines. It was nearly 4 in the morning when Clyde Witherspoon arrived in Cherokee Springs to take charge of the investigation. The 57-year-old sheriff had rarely seen dead bodies during his lengthy career in law enforcement. Duplin was a tranquil rural county where death occurred only from accident or old age. The lawman's weathered face reflected years of hunting deer in forests, not pursuing criminals in swamps. 4 young men awaited him on Haunted Hill. In true Southern fashion, Joe had shielded the women from unpleasantness by escorting them home before contacting police. By the time of Witherspoon's arrival, he was back at the burial site. After examining the corpse, the coffin, and the surrounding terrain, Witherspoon released the body to medical personnel and began to question the witnesses. Joe Rittenberg recounted the story of the funeral. The others corroborated his facts and supplied additional details. The sheriff then dismissed Joe, Chet, and Mookie with instructions to report to his office in Albertson at 10 the next morning, and, in the interim, to avoid discussing the case with anyone, leaving a deputy behind to seal off the site from curious observers. The lawman drove Jeb home. With a flashlight, the pair inspected the location where the young man had built and stored the coffin. "What time would you estimate that you finished the coffin?" Witherspoon asked. "Well, on Saturdays I get off work at 4. I went straight home carrying some scrap lumber to use for the job. I live only a block from my work, so I probably started building the coffin by 4:15. As you saw, it was a simple coffin, not much to it. When I finished, I started right away on the straw man. I used wire and strips of an old sheet to hold them together. Wasn't nothing fancy. The whole job didn't last more than 2 hours. Afterward, I dug the coffin containing the straw man over here, close to the house, and covered it with a tarp. I didn't touch none of that stuff again till all of us met at 11 on Sunday night. So when you'd finished everything and went inside your house, it was about 6:15, maybe 6:30. That's about right. Between 6:30 and 11 is a gap of 4.5 hours. The exchange of the real body for the dummy had to have taken place in that period of time. All right, Jeb, you can go in your house now, get a couple hours of shut-eye, but I want to see you again in my office in Albertsons at 10 this morning. And don't go messing with anything out here where you made the coffin. I'll be back later for a better look in the daylight. Next, Sheriff Witherspoon telephoned Camp Lejeune. At camp headquarters, Captain Arthur Mayfield affirmed that at the present hour, no on-duty base personnel were unaccounted for. He promised to investigate and report to Albertson by midday the status of all off-duty personnel. In addition, he would dispatch an officer immediately to the coroner's office to view the body and perhaps facilitate identification. It was almost dawn. Witherspoon yawned. Having arisen at 3 a.m., he was tired and wanted to go back to bed. But he knew that this would be a very busy day with no opportunity to sleep and perhaps no time even to rest. It was imperative that he be the first to view Jeb's yard and Haunted Hill in the daylight. Squeezing in meals might be difficult. He should eat breakfast. It might be his only meal of the day. So he pulled his car into the parking lot of Holly's Cafe, the sole restaurant open at this hour in Cherokee Springs. "Coffee, Sheriff?" "Yeah, black, please." "Surprised to see you here in our town at this hour." "Had to investigate a body found nearby." "A body? Here in Cherokee Springs?" Yep, up on Haunted Hill. Was that last night? From the look on your face, I must ask if you know something. Well, I don't know what to think. Saturday morning, some of the local boys came in here for breakfast. They was talking about holding a funeral up on Haunted Hill at midnight on Halloween. You know how kids are. I didn't think nothing of it. From the way they was a-talking, I thought it was going to be some effigy or something, not a real body. What'd they do? Dig it up from some grave somewhere? No, nothing like that. The body I saw had died not long before the attempted burial. Did you happen to see any strange young man about the age of those boys hanging around here in the last few days? No, can't say as I did. Well, can you tell me the names of the boys who were planning the funeral? Well, let's see. There was Joe Rittenberg, Chet Purdy, and Mookie Monroe. Oh, and Jeb Updike, too. They're all local boys, right? Right. They all growed up here in Cherokee Springs. Did you see or hear anything unusual that morning, aside from the talk about the funeral? Well, I noticed that Chet looked as if someone had beaten up on him. He had bruise marks on his face. I'll have to look into that later. Thanks for your help. After breakfast, Witherspoon called the homes of the three girls who had participated in the burial ceremony. All were asleep, so he instructed their parents to take them to his office at 10 that morning. Then he arranged for a photographer to meet him at the Updike residence. He wanted daylight photos of that location and Haunted Hill. Unfortunately for the lawman, a careful inspection of both sites revealed nothing of significance. Half an hour before the scheduled interviews, Sheriff Witherspoon reached his office. Some interesting news awaited him. The Camp Lejeune officer, Lieutenant Jeffries, had just finished viewing the body of the Marine and photographing it. According to him, the uniform was not standard issue. Jeffries was sending a sample of the cloth to Marine headquarters for identification. In addition, the coroner's report was now available. It set the time of death at approximately midnight on Friday evening. Death had resulted from a bullet through the chest. Surprisingly, the exterior wound had been cleaned before the body had been dressed in the uniform. The coroner had sent the slugs to the ballistics lab for examination. Two other items in the report caught the sheriff's attention. The body had a U.S. Marine tattoo on the left arm and bruised knuckles on the right hand. Witherspoon interviewed the women before the men, saving Chet for last. The only new fact of interest to emerge from the first 6 interviews was a statement that Chet had seriously considered joining the Marines at one time. All 6 people denied knowing the victim, and none could explain how the body got into the coffin. Sitting down for his interview, Chet seemed quite nervous. Witherspoon noticed the bruise and abrasions on his face. Well, Chet, last night's incident must have given you quite a shock. Yes, certainly did. I understand that the idea for the funeral was yours. Yes, sir. Can you tell me how you came to think of that? Oh, not exactly. Me and my friends was bored. We wanted to do something exciting for Halloween, so I suggested a mock funeral. Do you remember why you thought of that? We was talking about Halloween. That's supposed to be a scary time. Haunted Hill came to my mind. Then I remembered that the hill got that name from a Marine who died there long ago. Putting two and two together, I thought maybe we could have a funeral for the ghost." "I see. Someone told me you personally once gave serious consideration to joining the Marines. Is that true?" "Yeah, I thought about it. My dad loved the Marines. He was disabled and couldn't join the Marines himself, but before he died, he always encouraged me to join. His daddy, my granddaddy, died fighting for the Marines in World War II. So why didn't you become a Marine?" "I don't know, just sort of lost interest. They say that Marines are tough and they really know how to fight. Are you like that?" "Oh, I can hold my own." "Is that how you get that bruise and those cuts on your face?" "Oh, that? No, I just had a little accident." "What happened?" "I bumped into something." After Chet's departure, Sheriff Witherspoon mentally reviewed the conversation. Things didn't seem to add up. Obviously, the facial injuries had not resulted from a collision. While weighing the significance of this lie, the investigator received a call from Colonel Drusky at Camp Lejeune. His facility had no missing off-duty personnel. By contacting Quantico, Virginia, the other major Marine base on the East Coast, Drusky had learned that they too were intact. Although he could not speak with complete confidence, the colonel believed that the body in Cherokee Springs was not that of an active duty United States Marine. Witherspoon immediately checked his sources for information regarding missing people in North Carolina. Only one person resembled the deceased. A 22-year-old man named Dean McGill from New Bern had been reported missing on Saturday. The sheriff requested a photo of McGill as soon as possible. Early Tuesday morning, the lawman received another call from Camp Lejeune. Captain Mayfield said that, according to the Marine quartermaster, the uniform on the corpse in the coffin had been issued during World War II. What a stunning fact this was. The killer had shot his victim, cleaned the wound on the body, and then had dressed it in the uniform of a World War II Marine? Why? And how had the perpetrator managed to acquire a garment from a half-century in the past? On the following day, Sheriff Witherspoon received two important items. The ballistics report could not identify with precision the weapon from which the fatal bullet had been fired, but evidence suggested an old German pistol, perhaps a souvenir from World War II. The other item was a photo of the man missing from New Bern. Although the resemblance between this person and the corpse in the coffin was similar, it was far from a convincing match. DNA samples of the two men must be tested. Witherspoon spent the rest of the day tracking down the 7 people who had participated in the Halloween burial ceremony. He showed them the photo of Dean McGill. All denied knowing him. However, to the sheriff, Chet seemed to flinch when shown the picture. One very significant piece of information emerged from these new interviews. According to Mookie Monroe, in 1943, following the death of Chet's grandfather, the Marines had mailed to his survivors a package containing all his personal possessions, including his uniform. Upon hearing this, Witherspoon's heart leaped. That uniform might well be the garment from the body in the coffin. The sheriff and his deputies spent the next 2 days driving around the county showing people the picture of Dean McGill. Except in the New Bern area, no one appeared to know the young man. Entering his office at the end of the second day, the lawman discovered a message requesting that he call a number in White Lake, a tiny community in Bladen County. He called at once. "Hello, this is the Night Owl." "Hello, this is Sheriff Witherspoon in Albertson. I understand you wish to speak to me." "Yes, Sheriff. A customer passing through here said you were looking for a young man who disappeared last Friday. Well, I can't say for certain, but it's possible that I have some information that might help you. On that evening, 2 young men were in my bar. They were strangers to one another, but they got into a heated discussion. Just as they were ready to trade punches, I asked them to step outside. I didn't want no broken chairs and stuff in my place. When they went out, I could hear lots of noise. I didn't go out till closing time, but there was no sign of them. I don't know where they went." "With your permission, I'll drop by tomorrow with photos of 2 men for you to identify." "Fine, Sheriff. I'm happy to cooperate." Early the next morning, as Witherspoon was about to depart for White Lake, Joe Rittenberg approached his vehicle. "Morning, Joe. You got something to say to me?" "Yeah, can we go back into your office for a minute?" When they were seated, Joe didn't speak at once. He stared at the floor. "Tell me what it is you want to say." "Well, it's something about Chet, isn't it?" Joe looked up in surprise. "How'd you know?" "Don't worry about that. Just tell me what you know." "Well, Saturday morning, when we planned the funeral, Chet sat next to me in the booth at Holly's Cafe. He had a gun in his pocket. I could feel it when he bumped against me. I really didn't think much about it. I'd seen that gun before. It belonged to Chet's granddaddy, the one who died in World War II. It was part of the stuff the government sent back to his family after his death. Every now and then, Chet likes to get it out of the attic where the family keeps the stuff and show it off around town. You know, especially to the ladies. Well, as I said, I didn't think nothing about Chet's having that gun till I read in the paper that the Marine was shot dead by a gun. Now, I'm not saying that Chet did it. In fact, I don't think that he did. But I thought I ought to tell you. It kills me to have to say anything that might hurt my friend." "You did the right thing, boy. If he's innocent, we'll find that out. Don't you worry. Say, I just thought of something that might help me prove him innocent or guilty. Since you and Chet are such good friends, you must have a picture of him somewhere." "Yes, sir. May I borrow it for a short while? I'll take good care of it." White Lake was a tiny community along a minor road in a forested region. Clyde Witherspoon had no trouble finding the place he sought. An enormous sign, the Night Owl, and its equally large drawing of the nocturnal bird, grossly exaggerated the importance of the establishment relative to the world of business. The modest structure it advertised was in serious need of repair. To the rear of the building, mounted on concrete blocks, stood an even shabbier trailer, home of the nightclub's owner. Witherspoon knocked on its door. A bald man, yawning and dressed in pajamas, responded. "Oh, you must be Sheriff Witherspoon. Come on in." Passing through a screen door, the lawman accidentally kicked a mashed can lying on the floor and nearly stepped on a black and white cat that scurried down the interior passageway. The room reeked of beer. "Sorry about that cat. Can I make you some coffee?" No thanks. Sorry to disturb you. Guess you were sleeping." "That's okay. I work late, so I sleep late. I'll make it quick. Look at these pictures and tell me if they resemble the men who had the fight on Friday night." The man peered closely. "Sure enough, that was one of them," he said, indicating the photo of Chet. Not so sure about the other one." "The one you're sure about, did he have a gun?" "Maybe in his pocket, but I didn't see none in his hand." "You say you heard a lot of noise when the two men went outside. Could part of that noise have been a shot?" "I don't think so. I hear lots of hunters around here. That noise didn't sound to me like no hunter's gun." "Hunters mostly use rifles. Could that noise have been a pistol?" "I couldn't swear, but I doubt it." "How far away was the noise, and in what direction?" "Right outside, I think, right in front." "Thanks for your help." Going to the front of the Night Owl, the sheriff inspected the terrain for signs of a struggle. In a little time he found a reddish stain on a large boulder lining the gravel driveway. Fetching a plastic bag from his car, he scraped some of the colored surface of the rock and deposited the scrapings into the plastic bag. Then he sealed the bag and attached to it a piece of paper indicating the location, date, and time of discovery of the sample and the manner by which it had been obtained. On the road to Albertson, Witherspoon mulled the possibilities. Perhaps it had been no more than a fight. And then again, maybe Chet had killed his antagonist without the nightclub owner hearing the shot. A third interpretation was that Chet beat up his foe, forced him to accompany him to a different site, and killed him there. Whatever the explanation, at this point Chet Purdy, at the very least, had to be a strong suspect in the disappearance of the young man. Was it Dean McGill? And was McGill the corpse in the coffin? Instead of returning to the office, Sheriff Witherspoon drove to the library in Jacksonville. He spent the afternoon doing research on the Purdy family. The newspaper article that had reported the death of Chet's grandfather revealed a startling coincidence. A German officer had killed the man with a pistol on a hill in Italy on October 31st, 1943. Aware of the death, the grandfather's platoon had been unable to recover the body for a full day because of heavy gunfire, and when the unit finally reached the spot, the body was nowhere in sight. Now, on October 31st, 1993, exactly 50 years later, a man, apparently killed by a pistol, had appeared on a North Carolina hill dressed in the uniform of a World War II Marine. Finishing the article, Witherspoon exclaimed, "No wonder the ghost stories circulated." Nevertheless, he knew that the body had been seen in the coffin was no ghost. Moreover, a living person had taken that life, and it was his duty to apprehend the killer. For the moment, Chet Purdy remained the leading suspect. It was time for another talk with that young man. After lunch, he picked up the suspect at the hardware store where he was employed and drove him to the sheriff's office in Albertson. When the two of them were settled in their chairs, Witherspoon gave his guest a terrible shock. "Chet, at this point in the investigation, I don't have enough evidence to make a convincing case against anyone, but there are strong indications that you may be our man." "You're crazy. I didn't do nothing to nobody." "Nevertheless, by now it's my duty to tell you your rights." Chet listened in anger while the sheriff recited his rights. "Now then, Chet, you can help me prove your innocence by cooperating with me. I has been cooperating. Well, that's true. So far, so good. But I need more information. They tell me that when your granddaddy died in 1943, the Marines shipped his belongings to your family, and currently they are in the attic of your home. Is that correct? Who told you that? Never mind. Just tell me if it's true. I ain't saying nothing. You understand that I can get a warrant that will permit me to look. What you want to go do that for? I need to know what's there. Well, all right. Just ask me. Okay. Among your granddaddy's belongings, are there a gun and a military uniform? Surprised by the question, Chet delayed several seconds before replying. Yes, sir, there is. You're sure? I just said so. Is there anything else? Nothing that matters. Would you be willing to let me take a look? No, what's there ain't none of your business. All right, there's another way you could help prove your innocence. What's that? By providing me with a sample of your blood. What you want with my blood? Blood has been found at a potential crime scene. By analyzing your blood, I may be able to drop you from the suspects. Has anyone been telling lies about me? Well, that's what I hope to discover. Will you help? No, I ain't going to give no blood. Okay. To show you that there are no hard feelings on my part, I'm going to buy you a soda. What do you have? A surprised and suddenly smiling Chet Purdy replied, root beer. After his visitor had departed, Witherspoon carefully inserted the soda bottle into a plastic bag. Then he sealed and tagged the bag before sending it to the crime lab for DNA analysis. Along with Chet's sample, he dispatched the specimen from the White Lake Rock, a piece of skin taken from the corpse in the coffin, and a comb that had been used by Dean McGill. About 4 o'clock, a deputy brought Joe Rittenberg to the office at the sheriff's request. Joe, that piece of information you gave me about Chet's gun has been very helpful. I want you to know how grateful I am. What I've learned has definitely moved me closer to finding the murderer of the man in the coffin, but I still haven't reached my goal. With some more help from you, I may get there. What you want, Sheriff? As a good buddy of Chet's, you've surely been to his house before. Now, you've already said that your friend likes to show off his granddaddy's gun. Is it possible that he has let you see all the things that belong to his granddaddy? Yes, sir. Chet took me up to his attic a couple of times when no one else was around. He showed me all the stuff of his granddaddy's from World War II. It was in a box covered with a blanket. Tell me first of all about the gun. What was it like? Oh, I don't really know a lot about guns, but Chet said it was a German officer's pistol. Among the possessions, was there ammunition for the weapon? Couldn't rightly say. Can't remember. What else was there in the box? A Marine's uniform. Did it resemble the one in the corpse in the coffin? Well, now that you mention it, I think that it did, but I can't be sure. Is there anything else you can recall in that box? No, not exactly. Oh, I believe there was some medals or badges or something. I can't remember it all. It's been a while since I've seen those things. The next morning, Sheriff Witherspoon went to the county courthouse and secured a warrant to search the home of Chet Purdy. To serve the warrant, he waited until the young man had returned home from work. Evelyn Purdy, Chet's mother, was shocked to learn that a warrant had been issued for her home. Why y'all coming here? Has Chet done something? Chet, you tell me what this is all about. With her son remaining silent, Witherspoon spoke. We believe there may be evidence in this house that concerns the death of the young Marine on Haunted Hill. We'd like you to help us find that evidence. What's he talking about, son? She repeated the question angrily when Chet declined to answer. We'd like to see the attic first. What you want up there? Can't you wait till my husband gets home? Sorry, but we need to see the box that contains the belongings of Chet's granddaddy. Evelyn grabbed Chet by the arm. Let's go show him, but you tell me what this is all about. Ain't nothing, Ma. People been telling lies about me, that's all. Witherspoon and his deputy followed the Purtys up the stairs to the attic. The woman pointed to a large box covered by a blanket. There it is. Would you please open it, ma'am? Evelyn removed the blanket. The box was empty except for a few medals, patches, and a flag. Witherspoon turned to Chet. Where are the uniform and the gun? I don't know. Tell him, son. You must have done something with them. No, I tell you I don't know. The lawmen searched the rest of the attic and Chet's bedroom, but they found nothing of interest. Witherspoon discontinued the hunt, but he took the box from the attic with him. Later in his office, he examined the contents very carefully. He still failed to find anything of value. Perhaps the DNA report would provide conclusive evidence. 3 days later, Clyde Witherspoon was relaxing in a chair of his office. He was tired, and it was nearly time to go home. To himself, he reviewed the facts of the case. A young man, 22 years of age, was missing from nearby New Bern. On the night after his disappearance, a body, with a face resembling his, turned up in a coffin in Cherokee Springs. The deceased had been shot in the chest by a German pistol from World War II and dressed in a uniform of that era. The time of death of the man in the coffin coincided with the disappearance of the New Bern man. Chet Purdy had had access to the proper weapon and the proper uniform, neither of which could be easily obtained. Purdy had had a violent confrontation with a young man resembling the victim. Now he was uncooperative and belligerent. It must not be overlooked that the idea for the funeral on Haunted Hill had originated with the suspect. The case was not foolproof, but the powerful circumstantial evidence alone might win a conviction. Witherspoon made a decision. Tomorrow he would arrest Chet Purdy for the murder of Dean McGill. Probably all the other pieces of the puzzle would fall into place. The sheriff stood up and put on his jacket. At that moment, his deputy entered the office bearing an envelope. It was the DNA report that he had been awaiting. Perhaps this would be the conclusive element of the case. The report began with a lengthy technical explanation of the procedures involved. It concluded with the following statement. Testing demonstrates 475 million to 1 that the body of the corpse in the coffin is not that of Dean McGill. It also reveals 2 billion to 1 that the corpse is closely related to Chet Purdy, probably a father or grandfather. End of story. Now that's a real mystery. How did the body of Chet's grandfather, who died in Italy in Halloween of 1943, suddenly reappear in the coffin in North Carolina on Halloween exactly 50 years later? More mystery awaits you on our next program, when a group of young people will go on a scavenger hunt. Until then, thanks for watching Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery.